thousands of years, people around the world have believed in the existence of Satan.
The devil has many names and many different faces. Sometimes he appears as a monster, sometimes he's human. As the arch-fiend ruling over hell, he's terrifying.
Jerusalem is a holy city pilgrims visit yearly to explore and express their devotion to God. However, instead of finding something of God, pilgrims found evidence of the devil. Known for hosting biblical locations and sacred activities in God, outside the city lies a valley known for human sacrifice. Reports show the lives of children, both young and old, slaughtered in this valley, as a sacrifice to God or as retribution. It shows that evil existed long ago, and it's believed to be from the presence of the devil. There are different views on who Satan is, but is he real? Does he truly do evil even in the holy city? Join us as we investigate and decipher the unexplainable proof in Jerusalem that expresses if the devil is real. The Valley of Human Sacrifice. For thousands of years, pilgrims from all over the world have flocked to Jerusalem, a holy city in Israel, to show their devotion to God. But the Valley of Hinnom, which is located right outside the city walls, was formerly a center of idolatry where wicked deeds were carried out in honor of Satan, God's adversary. God informs his prophet Jeremiah in the book of Jeremiah that people are offering their sons and daughters as sacrifices in the Valley of Hinnom. God expresses fury that those who participate in such practices will suffer a terrible punishment and states unequivocally that he never asked them to perform this demonic ritual. Not everyone in the biblical times was obedient to the Lord. The Israelites were influenced by Satanism, and they would dig a large fire pit and offer their firstborn sons as sacrifices. This was done in the Hebrew word for hell, the Valley of Hinnom. It's difficult to fathom why someone would wish to sacrifice their child in the first place. This illustrates how people in ancient times thought that if they didn't make sacrifices to certain satanic demons or spirits, their crops wouldn't grow and the rains wouldn't come. The meanings of Hinnom and the children of Hinnom point to the original Jebusite owner as the source of the valley's name. Because the information provided by the Bible about the valley is ambiguous, its location is unknown. It was not at the East Gate as the KJV states, but rather at the entrance of the Potsherd Gate, which was situated along the border between Judah and Benjamin. The location of eternal punishment in the New Testament is referred to by the corrupted Hebrew name Gehenna, which was originally called Geben Hinnom or Gehinnom. There has been much discussion regarding the valley's location, as it has been linked to all three of the valleys surrounding Jerusalem. Though few do so now, early Jewish, Christian, and Muslim writers connected it to the Kidron Valley. It seems unlikely that the Tyropoeon Valley, which was included in the city walls before Manasseh's reign, was the site of the child sacrifice, which was most likely performed outside the walls. The Wadi Rababi, which starts west of the Jaffa Gate and heads south for about a third of a mile before bending gradually east to join the Kidron Valley, is the most commonly recognized location. The Wadi Rababi, also called Hinnom in the past, is situated in the Hinnom Valley if Bir Ayub is in Rogel. For many years, scholars disagreed over the exact location of the Valley of Hinnom. It was thought to be east of Jerusalem's Old City, now called the Valley of Josaphat, inside the Old City referred to as Tyropoeon Valley, or according to Joshua's account, running from east to west along the Old City's outer walls. This last place is now acknowledged to be the biblical Valley of Hinnom. The Valley of Hinnom, which runs parallel to Jerusalem's historic center, encircles the Old City. The Jerusalem Cinematheca is located to the west, Mount Zion lies to the north, and the villages of Silwan and Abutur are located to the south. Near the southeast corner of the Old City, the Valley of Hinnom merges with the Kidron Valley. Numerous graves from various eras have been discovered during archaeological excavations in Hinnom Valley, with the oldest one dating to the 7th or 18th century BC. Wealthy Jews who could afford a family tomb close to the Holy Temple were the owners of the elaborate family tombs that were discovered dating back to the 1st century AD. Remains of cremation burials, as well as Roman and Byzantine burial sites, have been unearthed from the excavation sites. 2 cemeteries and additional burial sites from the Crusader and Ottoman periods have also been found. A silver scroll from the 7th century BC that contained a portion of the Jewish priestly blessing was also discovered. Though its exact origin is unknown, Hinnom Valley might have been named for its original proprietor. The valley is known as the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, or the Valley of the Children of Hinnom in Biblical Hebrew. This valley associated with evil thus has biblical roots and affiliation. What do the Holy Scriptures have to say? What proof can be provided? The sinful valley in the Bible. The terms Valley of Hinnom, Valley of the Son of Hinnom, and Valley of the Children of Hinnom appear 13 times in the Old Testament, with the earliest reference being in Joshua 15:8, which says, "And the border went up by the valley of the son of Hinnom unto the south side of the Jebusite," the same as Jerusalem. "And the border went up to the top of the mountain that lieth before the valley of Hinnom westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants northward," in Joshua 18:16. "And the border came down to the end of the mountain that lieth before the valley of the son of Hinnom, and which is in the valley of the giants on the north. It descended to the valley of Hinnom, to the side of Jebusi on the south, and descended to Enrogel. King Ahaz of Judah sacrificed his illegitimate sons in the valley, as mentioned in 2 Chronicles 28:3. Moreover, he burnt incense in the valley of the son of Hinnom, and burnt his children in the fire, after the abominations of the heathen whom the Lord had cast out before the children of Israel. It is believed that the children may have been led safely through 2 lanes of fire as a religious ritual. However, some kings of Judah sacrificed their children by fire in the valley, as stated in Jeremiah 7:31, and they built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my heart. Many kings of Israel also worshiped Moloch and Baal in the valley, as affirmed in 2 Chronicles 28:1-4. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do right in the sight of the Lord as David and his father had done. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He also made molten images for the Baals. Moreover, he burned incense in the valley of Ben Hinnom and burned his sons in fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom the Lord had driven out before the sons of Israel. He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. And also in 2 Chronicles 33:5-6, for he, King Manasseh, built altars for all the hosts of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of the Lord. He made his sons pass through the fire in the valley of Ben Hinnom, and he practiced witchcraft, used divination, practiced sorcery, and dealt with mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger. The valley of Hinnom became cursed and was associated with evil in the book of Isaiah, presumed to be the burning place. Josiah tore down the shrine of Molech to prevent further child sacrifices, as mentioned in 2 Kings 23:10. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire to Molech. The biblical references associating the valley of Hinnom with child sacrifice, fire, and punishment have led to its association with hell. In Jewish religious texts, the valley is associated with evil, and the name Gehinnom became associated with hell and the fate of the wicked. In modern spoken Hebrew, Gehinnom is the word for hell. The word Gehenna is used 11 times in the New Testament and refers to a place where body and soul are destroyed and as a place of punishment. The name given to hell in Islamic beliefs is Jahannam, derived from Gehenna. In later Old Testament times, the valley had an infamous reputation because of Tophet, where parents sacrificed their children to Baal and Molech. Ahaz and Manasseh were guilty of this horrible act, and Isaiah referred to it as a place where the dead bodies of the unbelieving would lie, the worm would not die, and the fire would not be quenched. Jeremiah predicted that God would visit the valley with such terrible destruction that it would become known as the Valley of Slaughter. Josiah defiled the high place to make it unfit for its idolatrous rites, and it became a symbol of sin, punishment, and misery, because the bodies of dead animals and criminals were burned at its ever-burning fires. The prophet Jeremiah also strongly condemned the worship of Moloch. Jeremiah 32:31-35. This city has aroused my anger and wrath from the day it was built to this day. So I will remove it from my sight because of all the evil of the children of Israel and the children of Judah that they did to provoke me to anger. Their kings and their officials, their priests and their prophets, the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They have turned to me on their back and not their face. And though I have taught them persistently, they have not listened to receive instruction. They set up their abominations in the house that is called by my name, to defile it. They built the high places of Baal in the valley of the son of Hinnom to offer up their sons and daughters to Molech. Though I did not command them, nor did it enter into my mind that they should do this abomination to cause Judah to sin. The city of Jerusalem used to dump its waste and burn its trash in the Hinnom and Kidron valleys, which are located on the southeast side of the city. Prevailing winds carried the unpleasant smells away from the city, making it a convenient dumping ground. The Hinnom Valley was also where the Israelites threw dead animals from their temple sacrifices, allowing them to rot and be eaten by worms and maggots. The city's sewage was also emptied here, making it an unpleasant and disease-ridden place. During the Old Testament period, some Israelites sacrificed their children to the false gods of Molech and Baal in the Hinnom Valley. This practice was strictly forbidden, and anyone caught doing so was to be put to death by stoning. The worship of Molech involved the use of giant metal statues of a man with a bull's head, which had a hole in the abdomen and outstretched forearms that made a kind of ramp to the hole. A fire was lit in or around the statue, and babies were placed in the statue's arms or the hole. Those who practiced this believed that Molech would ensure financial prosperity for their family and future children. Drums and music were often played loudly to drown out the baby's cries. Baal worship was rooted in sensuality and often involved ritualistic prostitution in the temples. At times, it required human sacrifice, usually the firstborn of the one making the sacrifice. Jerusalem's Hinnom Valley, with its pagan history and unpleasant smell, is often used as a metaphor for both the Christian and Jewish concept of hell. Gehenna was the example used by Christ to communicate the concept of coming judgment and hell, as stated in Mark 9:42-49. It was said that it would be better for the one who causes one of these little ones who believe to stumble if he had been cast into the sea with a heavy millstone hung around his neck. If your hand causes you to stumble, it is advised to cut it off, rather than having your two hands and going to hell into the unquenchable fire where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Similarly, if your foot causes you to stumble, it's better to cut it off and enter life lame than to be cast into hell with 2 feet, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. If your eye causes you to stumble, it's better to throw it out. You'll enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than to be cast into hell with 2 eyes, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. Everyone will be salted with fire, as mentioned in Mark 9:49. Luke 12:5 states that Christ advised us to fear the one who has the authority to cast us into hell after killing. Interestingly, the Hinnom Valley hosts the field of blood, which was purchased from the 30 pieces of silver Judas received to betray Christ. This spot is marked by a monastery named Akeldama today. The inhumane act of sacrificing lives in the valley is terrifying, and it's evidence that the devil is in Jerusalem. However, is the devil really the author of evil? Who is the author of this evil in Jerusalem? Satan has been introduced in the Holy Book as a being responsible for bad happenings all over the world. There are many nicknames for Satan, such as Beelzebub, Lucifer, the Prince of Darkness, the Evil One, or Old Nick, which come from different sources, including scripture and folklore. Depending on the major world religion, there are different explanations for the character of Satan. However, fear of eternal damnation in the afterlife has always been sufficient to keep people religious and in line with the beliefs of their religious clerics. They warn them that failure to comply will lead to an eternity of suffering and damnation. The stories about Satan were created to teach moral lessons and interpretations of the world through the lens of having a figure of evil. The devil, also known as Satan, is widely recognized as the embodiment of evil and the enemy of all things good. Throughout history, the devil has been referred to by various names in different cultures, such as Baphomet and Mephistopheles. His physical appearance has also been described in various ways, including having horns and cloven hooves instead of feet. Despite his many forms, the devil and his demons continue to inspire fear as the ultimate symbol of evil. Although the devil is present in some form in many religions, he is perhaps best known in Christianity as the adversary of God and God's people. Satan is the embodiment of evil, a fallen angel who tempts people to not follow their best values. According to the Bible, the devil first appears in the book of Genesis as a serpent who convinced Eve to eat the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. As a result, Eve and Adam are banished from the garden and condemned to mortality. Although the name Satan is first mentioned by name in Job, his actions are recorded in previous historical accounts. For instance, in Genesis 3, Satan influenced the serpent, and in Genesis 4, Cain belonged to him as mentioned in 1 John 3:12. In the New Testament, Satan's current nature is revealed through other names. Devil, diabolos, means false accuser. Satan, slanderer in Greek, and is the word from which the English word diabolical is derived. Revelation 12:9 and 20. 2 refer to him as a dragon, while he is also called the evil one in several places. Revelation 12:9 describes him as that ancient serpent or serpent of old, while Matthew 4:3 refers to him as the tempter. Other names for Satan include Abaddon, which means destruction, and Apollyon, which means destroyer in Revelation 9:11. He was also named Belial according to 2 Corinthians 6:15. He is also referred to as the god of this world or age, according to 2 Corinthians 4, prince of this world as written in John 12:31, and father of lies as written in John 8:44. According to Matthew 12:24, Satan commands a hierarchy of demons, a diverse and extremely powerful army. This suggests that Satan is in charge of an otherworldly outfit that individually tempts people based on their sinful sensibilities in different cultures, as affirmed in Colossians 2:15, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. And in 1 Peter 5:8-9, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour, who resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. In most other religions and cultures, there is also a malevolent being that roams the earth, causing havoc and fighting against the forces of good. In Islam, the devil is known as Shaitan and is believed to have also rebelled against God. The idea of Satan flows throughout history and across religions. For instance, in Buddhism, there is a Mara who is a demonic king and an entity representing evil. There is also Iblis, who is the Islamic representation of Satan. In Judaism, the term Satan is a verb that usually refers to a difficulty or temptation to overcome rather than a literal being. In Buddhism, Mara is the demon who tempted Buddha away from his path of enlightenment. Like Jesus of Christianity, Buddha also resisted the devil's temptation and defeated Mara. Regardless of one's religion or belief system, the devil is almost always associated with fear, punishment, negativity, and immorality. With different religious views on who Satan is, what does the scripture say about its origin, activities, and individuality? Description of Satan from ancient texts. The devil was described in some detail in the Bible, with a name that means Lucifer, which means star of the morning. He was a prominent member of the angelic host and a very attractive and wise being, assigned to the guardian cherub role, which is a highly influential and powerful role. One of the most beautiful and powerful angels, Satan is said to have rebelled against God. There was a war in heaven that Satan lost and was sent down into hell, along with 1/3 of the angels who sided with him. The Greek transliteration of the name Satanas appears in the New Testament. In English translations, it is most frequently translated as Satan. According to legend, Satan is the head of the demonic spirits, the unending enemy of God and Christ, and he can appear as a bright light or as a threat. According to visions recorded in the book of Revelation, Satan will be subdued and consigned to eternal punishment when Christ returns to rule on earth after being bound with a chain for a millennium. According to the Bible, cherubim are imposing, majestic angelic creatures that surround God's throne. Ironically, according to Genesis 3:24, God drove Adam and Eve from Eden after they disobeyed him and gave in to the devil's temptations. God then dispatched cherubim to guard Eden. Satan is consistently portrayed in the Bible as someone who seeks to lead people away from God and toward evil. The Bible's book of Isaiah, which describes Lucifer, son of the morning, falling from heaven, is frequently the source of this belief. There have been historical accounts of Satan walking the earth and making threats to wipe out humankind. He introduces war where there is peace and darkness where there is light. The devil is frequently referred to as Lucifer, although some biblical scholars contend that the term Lucifer is more descriptive of a morning star than a proper name. The devil goes by many names, such as Moloch, the Prince of Darkness, the Lord of the Flies, the Antichrist, the Father of Lies, and just plain Satan. Another biblical passage found in the book of Ezekiel is frequently interpreted by Christians as evidence of the devil's existence. In addition to chastising the avaricious king of Tyre, the passage describes him as a cherub who was once in the Garden of Eden. Because of this, some Bible translators think that the king of Tyre represented the devil personally. As written in Ezekiel 28:12-17, "Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom, and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down amid the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom because of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee." The devil appears more frequently in the New Testament, where Jesus and his apostles warn people to be wary of the devil's crafty temptations that can lead them to ruin. In the wilderness, for instance, the devil tempts Jesus by offering him riches and glory if he falls and worships him. Satan's ability to control matter and weather patterns is demonstrated in Job 1, and in Job 2:8, he infects Job with a skin condition. He intends to harm Job, and because of our schemes, we have observed that he can perform feats that are not possible for humans. Jesus claims in Revelation 2:10 that Satan is attempting to influence Smyrna's legal system by imprisoning several Christians. Similarly, in Job 1:17, he coerces the Chaldeans into robbing Job of his cattle. We assume he is the driving force behind these actions, even though we are not told how he uses his influence. With countless myths and tales about the devil, how does it infiltrate and start to be taught in church? What effect does it have? The devil in the church. The devil started to be depicted all over churches in Western Europe around the 18th and 19th centuries, often as a monstrous beast, half human and half animal, sometimes winged, horned, sometimes black, and often emerging from the flames of hell. The figure of Satan had a significant role in the discussions about evil, salvation, and the atoning work of Christ among early Christian writers. The existence of Satan, a spiritual being, in a universe created and sustained by an all-powerful, all-wise, and all-loving God, raised problems that were discussed at length by early and medieval church writers. In the 18th century, there was a revolt against belief in the supernatural, and liberal Christian theology tended to view the biblical language about Satan as picture thinking and not to be taken literally. They saw it as a mythological way of expressing the reality and extent of evil in the universe, which exists outside and apart from humanity, but profoundly influences the human sphere. Pope Francis believes in evil spirits, Satan, the possibility of possession, and the need for exorcism. Exorcism is a term used to describe a ritual used in both Jewish and Christian traditions to drive demons from people who have fallen under their influence. It is an adjustment directed towards evil spirits to make them leave a person, place, or object. Exorcism also includes the rituals and actions used by pre-literate people to drive out or ward off evil spirits, though they are occasionally mistaken for witchcraft. According to Christian tradition, Jesus used a word to drive out demons and declared that this was a sign of God's kingdom coming. Demons were cast out in his name by both his followers and other people. The ability to exorcise was regarded as a unique gift that could be given to anyone, clergy or lay, during the first 2 centuries of the Christian era. But around the year 250, a unique group of lower clergy members known as exorcists emerged, and it was they who were given this unique responsibility. Exorcisms have been practiced since the oldest writings we have from the ancient Near East, India, and China, and are as old as recorded history. What is your conviction on who Satan is? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more related videos.